and welcome everybody to our webinar on tiny home lending with our guest, Michael Hicks. We're going to hear from Mike in just a minute. He's going to go over his experiences with tiny home lending. He's actually typically the borrower in those scenarios, but he'll talk about the structures of those deals and hopefully maybe give you guys some ideas on investment structures for your own future investing and maybe even for your retirement accounts. My name is Larissa Green. I'm with Advanta IRA, and I'm going to start out by introducing Advanta and what we do, and then we'll turn the webinar over to Mike. I have been with Advanta IRA since 2011, and I've done everything from check coding, receiving income, and paying expenses for IRAs, all the way through to transactions and helping people establish their new accounts. So what I do now is business development and education, and I've been in this role for probably at least 8 or 9 years now. And so some of you have seen me out and about. I attend a lot of classes. I do a lot of networking for Advanta, and of course, for myself as well in my role here at Advanta, I've learned a lot about investing in real estate, and I've used what I've learned to self-direct my own 401k. So that's a little bit about me. I'm available to answer any questions you have on self-directed retirement accounts. My contact information is on the slide for you. And if you guys do want a copy of the slides, I did load them into the handouts as an attachment. It's a PDF in there, so you can save those now for your records or to follow along and take notes if you want. They are up there. Again, you can look at the handout section on the control panel for yourself. I also want to mention before we go on that you are welcome to ask questions throughout the webinar. We are going to keep everybody muted just for the recording, but there is a question box in your control panel. Type any questions you have in there, and we certainly will be happy to answer any questions as we go through the webinar, and then I'll also allow a little bit of time at the end before we wrap up to take any additional questions. Advanta does not give any investment, legal, or tax advice, so please keep that in mind as we go through the webinar. But what we can do is possibly refer you to professionals that can help you with your questions. A lot of our webinars talk about the rules for investing in through self-directed IRAs, the sort of can and can't do's for those retirement accounts. But if you have specific questions about a structure, if you're wondering the tax implications, you're certainly welcome to ask those questions. And if it's something that we can't help you with, we'll definitely put you in touch with somebody that can. A little bit about Advanta IRA. We're a self-directed IRA administrator and been doing this since actually 2003. So we're almost at our 20-year mark, and we help people with qualified funds, so meaning IRAs, 401ks, and even HSAs and ESAs. So all of those accounts can be self-directed. I'll touch on that in just a minute, but that's what we do. We have 2 offices. We're in the Largo or Tampa Bay area of Florida, and we're also in Atlanta, Georgia. Our Atlanta office is sort of a marketing office, but we do all of our corporate stuff here in the Largo area. So if you are a client, you have an account manager, they're located here with us. But we have associates in Atlanta, and then we also have an associate in North Carolina. So we can help clients nationwide and even worldwide. If you have a retirement account that's US based, you can self-direct it, and you can invest within the United States and outside of the US. So all of those investments are going to be completely up to you. Advanta holds around 2.1 billion in assets under management for our clients, and we basically do all of that out of our Largo office. But like I said, we can help anybody anywhere. I think one of the biggest things about Advanta that sets us apart from our competitors is that all of our clients do receive an account manager, and that person is with you for the life of the account. So if you open an account, I'll basically help you do that, and then your account manager is assigned, and that individual is going to help you with questions from making contributions to the account all the way through to every transaction that you do. So your account manager is not specific to the transaction, they're specific to the account, meaning that if you're investing in real estate, you decide to buy gold and silver bars, you want to invest in cryptocurrency, that single person is going to be your contact point for all of those investments. So what is a self-directed IRA? If you're not familiar, our definition of a self-directed IRA is something very specific. We're talking about anything outside of the market. So a lot of times people will say, well, I have a self-directed IRA with a brokerage firm, but I can only invest in things that they sell. And so we actually don't sell any investments at all. We simply hold the account, you find the investment, and we help you get it done in the name of the retirement account. That's our role. We also do the record keeping for that asset and for your account. So any income received is deposited as income for the asset, and we do your IRS reporting. We also help you pay expenses on behalf of the account. So for example, if you buy real estate, you obviously will have real estate taxes and insurance that need to be paid, and that's what Advanta will help you to do. We see a lot of different private investments, and so this is a very short list of what we see, but it's kind of the more common investments for a self-directed retirement account. So things like buying and holding real estate, lending money in the form of a mortgage, even an unsecured note or a deed of trust. We see a lot of private placements, so limited partnership investments and private equity, precious metals, so buying the actual gold and silver bars and coins, different investments like foreign currency exchange, futures trading, and the list goes on and on and on. As long as it's allowed within the IRS rules, because there are rules for investing, as long as it's within the rules, then we can certainly help you with that in a retirement account. So we have webinars on the rules for investing and structures of investments that are allowed. And so if you guys are interested in learning more about those specific rules, you can let me know. And I'd be happy to send you over a webinar with that information in it. As I mentioned, we handle qualified accounts. Here's the accounts listed up here for you. And just note that if it ends in IRA, it can be self-directed. Also, former employers' plans will work. And sort of an asterisk there on former employer plan is just very simply because typically if you're currently employed and you're not considered self-employed, but you have, a W-2 job, typically if you're participating in their employer's plan, you may or may not be allowed to make those investments. So, or excuse me, to move a portion of that plan or maybe all of that plan. But it's always a good idea to check with those plans to see if they allow you to move a portion or all of that, because it does happen at times. It might be after you reach a certain age or you've had a certain amount of time with the employer that they do allow you to move that money. And that's just a little bit about the types of accounts that can be self-directed. I just wanted to give a quick example as well of how a first mortgage in an IRA works, because when we bring Mike on, starting with the next slide, he's going to talk about how he borrows from individuals, private money lenders, and possibly IRAs. And so I wanted to give you guys an idea of how that will work. Basically, in this example, Paul has $120,000 in an IRA and he wants to lend it out in the form of a first mortgage, and he meets a tiny home builder at a local real estate group and decides to invest. Paul and the borrower are going to come to an agreement on the terms. So again, Advanta really doesn't get involved in this portion of the investment. So Paul and the borrower will agree that maybe he's going to lend the total amount of $120,000 at say 8%, and maybe it's a 5-year balloon. There's maybe a monthly payment, but again, if Paul says, "Hey, I'm okay with no payments, just a single payment note," then that is completely up to Paul. And then in this case, it's secured by a first mortgage on the property. The lender would be Advanta IRA for benefit of Paul Smith IRA number 1234. So that just gives you an idea of what it looks like. So on the note and on the mortgage, the lender will be shown as Advanta IRA for benefit of Paul. And then once we have Paul agree by signing or approving those forms, we actually will fund that investment. So we work with the title company, the closing agent, whoever is involved in this investment and the purchase of the tiny home, so that we can make sure that it gets funded on time and properly by the IRA. So that just kind of gives you an example of how these deals would maybe work in the retirement account. And with that, I am going to turn this over to Michael, and he's going to introduce himself, and we're going to take questions throughout the webinar. So don't forget, and please do feel free to type into the question box. Hi, Mike. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Doing great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Awesome. You ready to get started? Let's dig in. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm really excited to talk about two of my favorite things, and that's tiny homes and lending or borrowing with self-directed IRAs. So a little bit about me. I've been in real estate for a little over 20 years. Started in residential new construction and kind of found my way into commercial and multifamily, commercial warehousing, self-storage, but started short-term rentals in 2016 and just really enjoyed that, and now kind of morphed my building background to unique short-term rentals. And that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit today is how we can lend and borrow from self-directed IRAs to tiny homes and tiny home developments, and what we might do and look for when we are making these loans, things that I would stay away from, or things that I would look for when I'm making a loan for a tiny home.
Are you having trouble with the slide, Mike?
I can't see the slide on the bottom left. Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. So this is just a quick stat to tell you a little bit about the glamping market. In 2020, it was valued at 1.88 billion and is expected to compound annual growth rate of 14.1% from 2021 to 2028. And with these glamping units, it's glamorous camping. It's the odd, the unique. This picture here is a shipping container home perched on a brow overlooking a valley off of Lookout Mountain here in Northwest Georgia. So we're creating a unique experience for our guests, unique not only in the home but also the property as well. And those are important things to take into account when you're looking at lending on a project. Is the location, just like anything, but type of home being offered as well. Slide. Advance the slide. There we go. So right now, more than anything, I think we're going to start seeing more of these staycations. With fuel prices on the rise, all of our expenses have gone up. So I think we're going to see a lot more people staying in place. And these staycations, they allow people to, they keep people from venturing out as far as they would have normally, but it gives them a wide range of destinations to choose from during their time off. So this I think will have a positive impact on the market growth, where we're staying close for the holidays and traveling closer to home within an hour and a half. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a later slide. When we're choosing a location for a property, we want to be within an hour and a half of major cities to where we can draw from that crowd. Go to the next slide. So I'll talk a little bit about the different types of glamping, and then we'll get into how we structured our deals and kind of what we're looking at. But we've got shipping container homes, tree houses. If I were to lend on a tree house, we're on a slide. There we go. If we can think about lending on a tree house, this type of structure. Myself, that wouldn't be a structure that I would want to lend on, because I don't typically want to rely on a tree to be my foundation. That tree dies, your investment goes with it. So that's kind of an area that I might stay away from. You can go to the next slide. Another popular one right now is the Airstream model, and again, it's a cool model, and we're probably going to do a few of these, but I don't know that I would tie up my IRA funds or lend on a project like this unless you have a really good relationship with your borrower. Obviously, it'd be pretty easy to pull up and hook up to this and take off, and you'd never see your investment again. So that's the main reason I would stay away from the mobile type, and that would be an Airstream or a tiny house on wheels. Next. Geodesic domes. So these are becoming really popular, and these are a low cost, low barrier entry unit. You can build these units out for around $35,000. Buy the kit, put it on a platform, and build a community of these in one spot. And they rent really well. Really good return on investment for the borrower, and solid collateral for the lender. They can be removed and disassembled and moved if somebody wanted to, but I feel like it's a little safer than the treehouse and the Airstream. Next. Yurts are a little, they're similar to the domes. They're a kit. You can put them up. They're typically built on a platform like this. They're a little more permanent than a geodesic dome would be. And these again are becoming really popular. They have the viewing window out the top. It allows for a cool experience out in the woods for your guests. It's just something different other than a hotel room. Next. A-frames, 10 years ago, I'd take a look at an A-frame and think, man, that sure is out of date. And now they've come back in style with a vengeance. There's a lot of different styles of A-frames. They've got the 10 by 12 that's a little bit lacking to a storage shed. They will come in and put a bed in it and a nightstand, and that's about it. They'll have an outside bathhouse. Those are working really well on Airbnb and direct booking websites, VRBO. A-frames are really popular right now. That'd be a great project to lend on. It's stick built, site built, not easy to pick up and move. Next. Tiny house on wheels. So, when people talk about tiny houses, this is typically what I think of, and what most people think of on the front end is, because this is kind of the pioneer of the tiny house movement, was these tiny houses on wheels. And again, for me, I don't want something that somebody can just pack up and move and me not know where it is. So that's probably not a direction that I want to go to lend on a tiny house like this, a tiny house on wheels. Next. VW bus, we're doing one of these projects right now. Ours is going to be built into a garage. It won't be movable. It's just another odd way of glamping and doing something unique that not many others are doing. There's probably 10 or 12 of these that I've found online. The whole inside is just a bed. That's about it. The outside space is your kitchen and living area. Just another unique way. Again, you go to your comfort level on whether or not this is a good project to lend to. It's a bin rather than a piece of real estate or an asset you can tie down. Next. So container homes, and that's kind of where I cut my teeth with the tiny homes. I started in my office parking lot. I just wanted to build one, get it out of my system, and then I had to find a place to put it. So we got out and decided we wanted to have a unique location with our tiny home, and that's how we found this property. Getting out and just driving for dollars and finding these properties. So with the container homes or with any tiny home, again, for me to lend, it will have to be on a permanent foundation. And we put these on permanent foundations. We built roofs over them. They could be picked up and moved if you took the roof systems off and did a lot of disassembling, but this is not something you could back up to and tow off in just a few minutes. So I feel a lot better about lending on something like this versus the towable units as well. Next. So I'll talk a little bit about location, just like any real estate, location. It's what we've all been taught and what we've all listened to time and time again. I want to be within 30 minutes of a big city center. So we're outside of Chattanooga and we're about 27 minutes. But we've also have Birmingham to the south, have Atlanta to the south, Nashville and Knoxville to the north. So we've got 5 larger cities within an hour and a half to 2 hour drive that we can draw guests from. Now we pull guests from all over, but we have noticed since the fuel prices have started to rise that we are drawing from these closer locations and getting a lot more local buyers. But again, you see these are on permanent foundations. They're poured block. They're sitting there. This roof is a rooftop deck. It's not finished at this point in the photo, but again, we're building permanent structures to where they are tied to the dirt and solid asset. Next. So I talked about the cities and how I came up with this ABC triangle, and that's Atlanta, Birmingham, and Chattanooga, and this is kind of my model. And you can pick that up and move it anywhere you want and pick out your cities. But whenever I'm looking at these cities that I'm wanting to place properties in, I look around and see Are there state parks nearby? Is there hiking and biking available? Water sports, tourist attractions, dining. Is it outside of the city? When you come into a city limits, you tend to deal with more zoning and zoning regulations. So that's why I try to stay out of the cities. They're not as conducive for a unique build as you would say out in a rural setting. So typically when we can get 30 minutes or so outside of the city limits, the big cities, we can find that zoning that we need to do something that's a little different, a little unusual, and not necessarily frowned upon like you would find in a bigger city like Atlanta and Chattanooga and Birmingham. Next. So these are my criteria for buying, and these tiny homes will work in other locations, but I feel like if you come at it with a multi-layered approach, that you will have a higher level of success with your rental. So you're not only you're appealing to more than one avatar. So when we're setting up these tiny vacation rentals, we're reaching that millennial, the avatar, the customer avatar, to where they're wanting to get away, they're wanting to stay away, they're wanting to chill out, they're wanting to relax, they're wanting to experience something unique in their stay. But we're also giving the views, the sunsets, the sunrises, the waterfront that other rentals in the area aren't able to give because of location. So we're definitely targeting that avatar and trying to create the space specifically for them, but we're getting multiple avatars in one setting by offering the unique property and the unique. So we are exclusive to mountain views, water views, or waterfront, creek, river, lake, ocean, etc. So that's my criteria, but that's not saying that's what everybody's criteria would be. Next. So how did I fund this project? When we got ready to start this project, when I decided I'm going to build this in my office parking lot, I knew that a shipping container that wasn't tied to property was probably going to be a hard sell. So I funded the build of the shipping container out of pocket and built it out in my parking lot. And then once we found the property, we moved into funding the remainder of the build out and the purchase of the property. And I listed in here as private money. And when I'm talking about private money, that is self-directed IRAs. That's financial friends that have self-directed IRAs and that I have a history of borrowing with, and they're comfortable on some of these deals. So when you see these deals, some of you be like, heck no, I'm not touching that. I wouldn't lend on that. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. What I would say is figure out what you're comfortable with, figure out who you're comfortable with, and then make it happen. As a borrower and as a lender, I look at the project as a whole. But as a borrower, I'm going to figure out what I have to do to make this project work. And, a couple of years before I did the project, I was on a cruise and we had a trade board, and I offered up, the container was already built, but I offered up a stay in my luxury shipping container home in trade for something. I about got laughed out of the room. So it's all in what you're comfortable with, but it's also, as a borrower, being confident in what you have and knowing your product. So we'll go to the next slide. So again, this is not the way, it is a way. And you just got to figure out what works for you in order to make it happen and do it. I've so many times in my real estate investing career, you go to the bank and you get told no time after time after time. Then you learn to work with private lenders and self-directed IRAs in order to make your deals that wouldn't work inside that box at the bank, but will work for you and that lender. some of the interest rates that I'm paying are higher. And hey, I don't have a problem with my friend making good interest in his IRA. That's what we're here for, to work together and to come up with solutions. So let's look at how we put this together, and we'll go from there. Slide. So the land cost. This was a property that had been sitting for a couple years. The sign, when we found the lot driving, it had laid over, weeds growing over the sign. The realtor hadn't been keeping in contact with the property, didn't know the sign was laying over. But anyway, we found the lot. It'd been on the market for a while. They couldn't get rid of it. We offered them 80,000. It was listed at 80,000. We offered them 80,000, 15,000 down. Seller carry of the remaining 65,000 at 1%, amortized over 10 years. We went back and forth. They finally accepted, but that put me with a payment of $569.43, and that is my first mortgage. Go to the next slide. The container one, again, I self-funded. We were about 28,000 on the build of the container, and then the remainder of that 95,000 went into the infrastructure, 3 septic tanks, pump tanks, site prep, clearing, power, that sort of thing. Next slide. Container 2, remember we have our infrastructure in at this point. That one was $60,000. That was a 10% loan from a self-directed IRA over 10 years with a payment of $792.90. That was the second mortgage. Container 3, it was a little simpler. It was a single container. It was $50,000, and that was also a self-directed IRA. 10% interest only. Annual payments of $5,000 or $416 a month. She chose to take the annual payments, and that was my third mortgage on this property. So go to the next slide, please. This is a breakdown of the mortgages and the total payment and the total invested. Next slide. This is a little bit about the different properties and some of the process of how we're building it. I think I can get this controlled now. A few pictures of the build process. These all had to be built off-site, cut off-site, and fabbed off-site, and then hauled to the lots in order to set them. And this is the finished product on the first 2. We did add a third container at some point. This is the third container as it was being built, and that's the finished product. So how do they perform? And this has stayed pretty close. This is a slide I had for another presentation, but we've hovered between 97 and 99% occupancy rate, and our rates have eased up. We've started using software that will adjust the rates daily, and that has got us a higher nightly average than what's shown here. So we are doing a little better on our nightly rates than what is shown here in the slide, but you get the picture here. Slide. So these units gross 203,000 a year, net 150. My all-in was 110 with the build out of the first unit and the down payment. Return on investment of 136%. So the second mortgage, the first mortgage is still in place. We've already paid off the second mortgage. Obviously, I don't want to drag out a 10% note any longer than I have to. We paid it off in 18 months, and now we're paying off the second mortgage, the now second, what was the third mortgage. I'm leaving the 1% as long as I can leave it, and that's the 10 years. But know that you can take and invest with the right borrower, with the right property, and do it with a small dollar IRA that, typically you have a hard time finding a place to put that $50,000, $60,000 IRA to work. At least I have in the past, knowing that I can take and turn and lend my IRA to someone to build a unique home on a unique lot and have them get good returns. I'm getting a decent return on my IRA. I can do that and not have to worry about my IRA and the performance. So you want to look for borrowers who are designing and building properties that are a magnet for influencers and photographers. These units that we've done have over 1 million combined views on YouTube. There's viral reels of these units that have gotten over 4 million views. If you're building properties that are seeing these types of views, they're going to be successful. These influencers will share, they'll put the properties out, and it's just a magnet for that guest avatar that we were talking about. So again, you know, we're pulling these photographers and influencers that are coming to say they post pictures like these, and then everybody wants to recreate that in their own way. Slide. So this is our next project. Our next build was this tree house, and it was also funded with 2 different self-directed IRAs, one for the purchase of the land and one for the purchase of the for the build of the home. And I talked earlier about tree houses. You know, there's those that believe that they're the hardcore tree house enthusiasts, and they're looking and saying this isn't built on a tree. It's not a real tree house. So you know, if you want to go that route, this is built on piers, just like a house at the beach would be, or a house in the mountains would be. It's built around trees to give that effect. So again, I don't want my foundation dying and falling out from under me. Slide.
So we had a question pop up on that one. You
Yeah.
said that it was funded by a couple different self-directed retirement accounts. So is this one also in a first and second mortgage type of structure?
Yeah, I've got the structure on next couple slides.
Okay.
Yeah, so here's the structure on this one. This the land acquisition price. This was 18 acres on the brow, similar to the other property. It's a sunrise view instead of a sunset view. Same mountain, 10 minutes apart. This one was the purchase price was 135. I borrowed 135. It's 9% amortized over 15 years. The other thing we worked out with our lender, and this is why I like dealing with private lenders. This is a lender that I've had a relationship with for several years. And it's been a, you know, professional relationship, meeting at seminars and networking. And, you know, we got to talking and she had money she wanted to put to work. So we structured this to where she lent the full purchase price of the land in first position, but I had no payment, no interest due for 6 months. And that gave me time to build the structure, get it renting, and then start making my payments. So again, being able to work with your lender and set up a structure that worked for both of you. Now the interest was accruing and then tacked on to the note. So I just had no principal or interest payments during that 6-month period. Slide. So the tree house build itself was $90,000, put $20,000 out of pocket, and spent $70,000, borrowed $70,000 interest only from a self-directed IRA, and that payment was $583.33. So I've got $20,000 out of pocket in this property. The rest is private lender. Slide. So a gross annual income of 125, net 95,000, total investment out of pocket $20,000, ROI 450. And these are typical numbers for these tiny homes. If you're building, you know, the other part of this is I am the builder. So I'm saving a lot of contractor fees and able to do things a lot more affordably than somebody is paying a builder to build these homes. But you can go to the next slide. So this is an A-frame build in Blue Ridge, Georgia. Started this one. This is, again, is on a unique lot. You can go to the next slide. And this is a 1-bedroom, 400 square foot tiny home. It is a bedroom loft with a bathroom below, and then a living area with a large porch on the front. Slide. And that's the view from the porch. That's a steep yard. It is walkable down to the water, and that's about all you hear while you're there is the water. So again, pulling off the unique feel. This one we did 50,000, I say out of pocket, but it came from a 1031 exchange. And then we borrowed 90,000 to build the A-frame with it was two different self-directed IRAs. A husband and wife pooled their money and lent together at 10% interest only. So I'm making two payments. And then we'll convert to a 10% amortized on 15 years at the completion of construction. All three of these deals are structured a little different. They're all structured using seller financing, private capital, and then self-directed IRAs.
Okay,
Yeah,
we had some questions pop up. If you don't mind, Mike.
sure.
We had someone ask, what is the lifetime of the construction and who does the maintenance?
So if you're the lifetime of the construction is I mean, it would be that of a stick-built home. You're taking into account the posts inside of concrete using sleeves. You're minimizing the rot on that. I don't see any. It's built again just like any post and beam construction. I don't see any issue of it. Being a 30 to 50 year structure, and then we're maintaining. Of course, we're not borrowing the funds or building this with our IRAs. We lend for other tiny home builds out of our IRAs, and we're borrowing from our IRAs, so we are able to do the maintenance on these units, which is
Okay.
minimal for the first 10 years.
And what about the insurance on properties like these? Is there anything specific that stands out to you, or can you insure these properties just like you can any other?
Yeah, these have all been insured with REI Guard. I think that's who most of the investors use for their flips and their vacation rentals. And they haven't had any issue with anything. They did question the tree house and whether or not it was on a tree. And once we, pass that along, that was the other thing, to get through codes enforcement on a local level, they wouldn't allow us to attach to a tree as well. So that's the way we went with that.
So another question popped up on that then as well. I mean, do you find it harder to or more expensive to get crews when you're building up into areas that are mountainous with narrow roads, or are you working with crews that are from that area, and so it's not something that would be difficult?
Yeah, so locally here in Chattanooga, I mean, 25 minutes from town is not far, and it's not a burden on any of the crews. I've been, again, I've been building for 20 years, and I've got set crews, and they pretty much go where I need them to.
Gotcha.
With the build in Blue Ridge, I am having a little more trouble getting crews out there, but it's more of a lack of knowing somebody in the area than it is anything. My framers have gone down there, my plumbers and heating air and electricians are going down there. It's the grading and the dirt work, the people that don't want to lug heavy equipment that I'm having trouble to get to go.
Okay. Another question that popped up: what accounting or ERP software do you use to manage the business?
Go ahead and talk to my wife on that.
Got you. Thanks, Mike.
I will get that answer. She manages the vacation rentals and the vacation rental software. So I just do the building and the borrowing.
Gotcha. Oh, that's all the questions I have for now. But guys, keep the questions coming. Don't forget, type them into the chat box if you have them.
All right, you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
So I think this is getting close to the end, but what do you want when you're looking to lend on a tiny home? And again, this is different for everybody. This not a way. It's not the way. It is a way. I want mine to be on a permanent foundation. I don't want to, I don't want to pull up to a lot where my tiny home's the tiny home that we lent on is supposed to be, and see that it's disappeared. Again, know what you want. Do you want to lend on unique properties? Do you feel secure in lending on unique properties? Is this something that you're comfortable doing? And then, good collateral. Jimmy Napier talked about going to the doctor, and the doctor checked his blood pressure, and she just looked at him in disbelief and said, "Oh, wow, your blood pressure is excellent. Well, how is that? Why is that?" And he looked at her and told her good collateral. So, we've got to make sure that we've got good collateral. And again, that's those things: the permanent foundation, the properties that aren't going to roll off on us, good free and clear land. And that's, talking about the land and the location. If you're not from the area where you're lending, try to get with some realtors or try to get with somebody on the ground that can tell you a little bit about the area. This is outside of your borrower, but some of the other things to look for before you start writing checks is, does that land perk? Are utilities available? Is the land approved for what the borrower is wanting to put on the land? All those are things that could derail a deal really quick and, uh, you know, cause problems with your note. Um, and then, of course, you want a promissory note or a security deed and a deed of trust. That's with any real estate transaction. Just do it through a title company. Make sure everybody's checking their paperwork, and then build relationships with your borrowers. I think that's all of the slides.
We did have another question pop up on the zoning. Um, you don't have to go in too much detail, but could you elaborate a little bit on the zoning? So, for example, if you were going to build a container home on a piece of land, what do you have to know about the zoning in order to do that?
Yeah, so you really need to know what you want to do, what you want to build before you ever approach planning and zoning. The things that usually get you when you go to planning and zoning are square footage, and just about all of the jurisdictions we've built in, except for one, have a minimum square footage. So that's the first kicker that I always ask for is, do you have a minimum square footage? Because if you go in and want to build this 400 square foot home and their county ordinances says 700, then that's locked you out of your project unless you want to build your home 300 feet bigger. And with the lots that we're targeting, we're looking for lots that don't fit the mold. So it might be a narrow lot, a lot that was left over when they did the development, and it was 40 feet wide instead of 80 feet wide, and that will. But the complications that go along with that lot is it won't be approved for a 3-bedroom septic. It's only going to be approved for a 1-bedroom septic. So that cuts 90% of the buyers out. So that gives you leverage when you go to make your offer. So the only thing you can put on there is a tiny home or a big home with 1 bedroom. So these lots make really good lots for us to pick up and put these tiny homes on, because we can go in and do what we want if the zoning allows for it. So again, you got to ask the square footage requirement, which is all over the board. I've seen it from 300 to 900 to 1200. The next thing I ask is, do you allow yurts, domes, shipping containers, tree houses? And they usually give a yes, but. So with a shipping container, they want yes, but it has to be engineered. With a tree house is yes, but it can't be on a tree. It has to be on a foundation, a pier foundation. The problem I'm seeing with the yurts and the domes is that they are considered temporary structures, and they are not allowed in a lot of places because they don't know how to tax it. Is the root of it. They haven't figured out how to tax a temporary structure, so they just don't approve them. The other thing that you really need to watch for is the previous deeds. I've purchased property or looked at properties to where, that you see all the sellers as unrestricted land, unrestricted land. The county doesn't have restrictions, but there are deed restrictions as well. And you can get back and find that, there's a deed restriction in there that says it must be greater than 750 square feet. It cannot be used commercially. It cannot be used as a rental. It cannot have an accessory garage, or there's just so many things that a seller can put on a property. And, you know, one deed references the previous deed that references the previous deed that has the restrictions. So just check your deed, check your zoning, and find what works for you. The way we've done it is to we'll call the counties. You know, if we have an area like the Blue Ridge, LJ, Dahlonega, Helen area, and we called all 4 of those counties there and determined that only one of them will allow this type of tiny home, or, you know, a shipping container home. So we just automatically cut out the other 3 and went and started looking for property in the one that allowed it. So you'll save yourself a lot of time just kind of creating a checklist of things to ask at planning and zoning and go that route.
Great. And yeah, that's great information. And there were a couple more questions here if you have another minute, Mike.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people asked about getting in touch with Mike. So here's his contact information on the slide. And again, these slides are attached as handouts for you guys. So if you want the handout, look at your control panel for the webinar and click on handouts, and it's loaded as a PDF for you. One question that popped up was, what's the max square footage you can build? And I guess you kind of already covered that. Really, it's probably based on the lot, but maybe you have some experience also about sort of the smallest and largest of what you would consider a tiny home or a container home, Mike.
So the max for a tiny home, that definition is broad and argued by many. So, you know, my definition of a tiny home would be anything under 500 square feet. And in Georgia, for residential living, there is no minimum square footage. However, you have to meet a certain square footage to be a habitable structure. So there's no defined minimum, but I think that square footage is 60 in Georgia. But I'd have to go back and look at the code book to be sure. I don't want to build anything that small. I got to be able to turn around. But yeah, I think that's the minimum. And you know, I'm not tied to a tiny home. If it's 700 feet or less, I feel like you know, you're still appealing to the ones that are your avatar guests, and you're still you know, you're still able to put it on that unique lot. It also depends on the lot itself. You know, the lot that we put the containers on, that's 2.5 acres. We were approved for a 3-bedroom home or 3 1-bedroom tiny homes. So we could have built 1 3-bedroom home that would have been more costly to build than the containers, and it wouldn't have produced the income that the containers produce.
Got it. Um, So there were some more specific questions, but Mike, I'm going to have people with very specific questions reach out to you. Mike's contact information is up on the slide, so everybody please feel free if you have specific questions for Mike on certain investments, please reach out to him. His contact information is there. I don't see any additional questions up here. So one of the questions I did want to address though before we go was asking about finding deals. And so you know, we talk a lot about networking, and Mike mentioned it as well. So just keep in mind, guys, that if you're looking to make specific types of investments, you're looking for a specific type of collateral, a deal structure that will work for you, keep in mind that networking is usually the way that a lot of people find their deals, find their financial friends, find their next borrower, their next lender. I do a lot of networking for Advanta because I'm out there in you know, the real estate groups meeting people who want to lend money, but they're not sure how to get started, and they find they can use an IRA. They might meet somebody they want to lend money to, and same with borrowers. We have a lot of individuals that refer clients to Advanta that they don't actually have an IRA themselves, but they are borrowers of IRAs. So as they meet people that want to invest with them or work with them on certain structured investments, they can do it through an IRA, and finding out that they can do that through a qualified plan is almost like opening another bucket of money that they have access to. But again, a lot of that stuff is done through networking. So getting out into your local area, meeting people, asking about making certain investments, and then of course doing your own due diligence. So making sure that you're comfortable with the investment, you understand the investment, finding out what the security is, doing due diligence not just on your borrower but on the investment as well. So that's all going to be very important when you're investing, not just with your retirement account but with personal funds as well. Did you want to add anything else, Mike?
No, I definitely agree with that. I just, that's where I've met all my private lenders, and again, I call my my self-directed IRA lenders private lenders, because I mean they essentially are. But um, is going to the seminars and going to the real estate events and just telling people what you do and spending time and developing a relationship. I don't ever ask, hey, do you have money I can borrow? I talk to people, and I had genuine conversations, and usually after 3 or 4 seminars, they're reaching out to me. And that's the way I want it. I don't want to ask for money. I don't, it's those are uncomfortable conversations to begin with, but we're all there for the type of thing to begin with. We're there to meet lenders, to meet borrowers, to meet other people that are doing deals. And you've got to find, you go to a seminar, it kind of reminds me of high school sometimes. You see the same groups of people, the cliques. No, I won't call it a clique, but you see the same groups of people talking and eating lunch together every time. And you kind of go to these seminars and you find your people, and that's who you build the relationships with. We have to put our horse to a wagon and go, and a lot of times who I might chase after is not who you're chasing after, as far as what we're aspiring to be and do. We all have different methods to go about to reach our goals, and the important part is that we're reaching for them and not just talking about it. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
go to the seminars and get educated and meet as many new people as you can. If you see me out at one, stop and say hi.
Yes, exactly. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure you and I met at a seminar a couple years ago, Mike.
Hmm. Yep.
So we actually know each other through another individual, but I do believe that we met at one of the real estate seminars that we all attend. Another question did pop up as well. Do deed restrictions have termination time?
So again, that's all dependent upon the state. I've been told that some states have termination on their restrictions, and some allow them to be 40 years. Some I've seen some that say it's 25 years and then auto renews annually after that. You just have to read your deed.
Got it.
And there's
Okay.
also I've been in a situation to where there were deed restrictions, and we were able to get, if there's 10 lots in that subdivision, and a subdivision is dividing the property. It doesn't have to be a subdivision like we think of with streets or with sidewalks, and it could just be a subdivision of a larger plat. But they'll usually say in that language in the deed that you have the ability to release those restrictions by getting 7 of the 10 property owners to sign saying that they will remove that. And we've had luck doing that, because once you've produced a quality product and they can see what you're doing, they don't have a problem with it.
Okay. Well, that's good information. I didn't see any more questions. I'm going to end the webinar now. I appreciate everybody for joining, and thank you so much, Mike. Again, you guys, if you have specific questions for Mike, his contact information is up there. My contact information was on one of the first slides. If you have questions for me, please feel free to reach out. You can download the PDF that's attached as a handout. This webinar is going to be available as a recording probably tomorrow. The marketing team is usually pretty quick with it, so that will be emailed out to you as well, so you can review it again if you would like. Thank you so much, Mike. We really appreciate you attending and hosting today.
I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.